Folks, today's guest is a queen in the cryptoverse. After graduating from the University of Southern California, she worked at big dog companies like Goldman Sachs and Andreessen Horowitz. She left A16Z to learn how to code and was later hired at Coinbase. Ever heard of them? Present day, she's a software engineer and blockchain enthusiast, a true woman of the people who also offers a free intro to crypto course. I'm pleased to welcome to the Crypto News podcast, Preethi Kasireddy. Preethi, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
We are very excited to have you here as well. I understand you're in beautiful Palm Beach, Florida. How is that treating you?
It's great so far. I can't complain. We moved from California, so things here are a lot more open, which is nice. And so far, the people are really, really nice. So I'm excited to see what else Florida has to offer.
Have you been in Florida in the July and August summer months yet?
No, I haven't.
It's a little bit of a grind.
Yeah, so I have no idea what to expect.
Nice.
Yeah.
I'm currently in Jupiter, and as a Canadian from Toronto, it has been just incredible being here for a couple months. So grateful to not be in Canada, where lockdown is pretty bananas right now. It seems like it's more communist than anything else, but that is a story for another day. Building on the Florida topic, before we get into an intro of Preethi, I'm sure you've seen all of the venture capitalists and big time companies moving from San Fran over to Miami and to Austin, sort of the exodus of the West Coast or to the East Coast. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it's fascinating. So I think what is happening now is that the late stages of the exodus are starting to become a lot more evident to normal people. So I kind of started to see this happening starting back in like 2015, 2016. So it's not new. But now because of the pandemic, I think it sort of made people reevaluate everything in their lives, including where they live and what they want to do. And so a big part of that is that people are leaving from cities or leaving from places that they otherwise were staying at for a long time, because now it's like they have no choice but to deal with all of the issues that they never really dealt with, because now they have time. So I think the exodus is just showing that this is all just pent up demand, and now they have a place to come, which is Florida. And I think a lot of people are choosing Florida, or at least were choosing Florida, because of how, honestly, very like proactive the mayor was on Twitter. And I think we don't really see much of that happening across the country. We don't see our leaders really doing that much. But he did something very radical and very different by going on Twitter and being very proactive. So then he brought some early talent to Florida, like Keith, Boyce, and so forth. And then that continued to create a flywheel effect where more and more people just started to come because they started to see that there was energy there, there's optimism there. And I think if you go to San Francisco, like it's not nearly as optimistic anymore. It was in like 2012 timeframe, but now I think there's a lot of pessimism around it. So I think that you're starting to see the flywheel effect go off with people coming to Miami, and then only time will tell whether this is going to create something real and lasting, or whether it's sort of like, just a little bit of hype. But I think like because of the quality of the talent that's coming and the optimism, there's a huge chance that there's something real that will happen here. Miami
becoming one of the crypto capitals of the world is definitely very exciting and much needed for the United States of America, or just North America as a whole. But what Mayor Suarez has done with his Twitter campaign, like he has literally made a fool of every other major city mayor like in the planet. Like no one is doing this, and he's created a playbook that no one else has, and it's so cool to see. Do you have any other hot takes on which cities in the States would be the next ones to follow?
Yeah, it's interesting. I thought like Austin would blow up. And I think it saw what Miami is seeing today, but I think it kind of mellowed out over the last couple months. You don't really hear as much about Austin anymore. I mean, Elon Musk and Joe Rogan, all of them moved out there, but that's another city to watch. Personally, I'm not as excited about Austin just because it's just not my vibe, I guess. Miami is is more interesting to me. And even I think Balaji, who's super anti-US now, he was saying that he's also excited about Miami. And so there's a lot to be excited about with that. Besides that, like, I don't really know if I'm as excited about any other city in the U.S., to be totally honest.
Wyoming?
I think, like, maybe. I think a lot of the most exciting energy is happening outside of the U.S., in places like Asia, like Singapore, India, and stuff like that. So
I'd love to get into, and we'll get into this later on, about Singapore, India, and other countries that are really making moves in the crypto space. But you brought up Balaji. Have you listened to his recent podcast on the Tim Ferriss Show?
Yeah, I listened to it. It was great. It kind of really summed up his whole worldview of how he thinks about things, and it was really, really helpful.
He is. I'd love to just spend one day in his head to see what's going on and to see what bounces around up there. That is one smart cookie.
Yeah, he's very well read.
He certainly is. Let's jump right into you. Now, you have an extremely interesting past, and you made one career move that is absolutely crazy. It's bananas. Quitting one of the most prestigious venture capital firms, if not the most prestigious in the whole world, A16Z. Could you tell our audience a little bit about your past, how you graduated from uni, got a job at Goldman Sachs, then went on to A16Z and left? That would be really cool.
Sure. I was in engineering college, and like most college graduates, I had no idea what that even meant and what I would be doing after college. But I enjoyed math and physics, so I pursued engineering. And I was also a business minor because I felt like I didn't want to spend all my time around nerdy engineers. I felt like I needed to be around like normal business people. So through that, I took a finance course and I liked it. And then I met a bunch of investment bankers, or at least like interns. And so long story short, I sort of fell into that investment banking recruiting crowd. And I just really loved the energy of the students that were doing that, because they were just like so much more proactive and hustling compared to engineers. I think engineers in college tend to have a chip on their shoulders because they know they're smart and they know that an engineering degree is valuable and that they'll get a job. They don't really have to work hard for it besides just working hard in school. Whereas business, it's a lot more competitive. And so people are really hustling. So I really like that hustle culture. And so I kind of got sucked into that crowd and ended up doing the whole investment banking recruiting process of going to like these meetups, etc. Eventually, I started interviewing and I got a job at Goldman. I got an internship, and that's what brought me up to Silicon Valley. And I did the 3-month internship, and then they gave me the full-time offer. So that's after college, I came to Silicon Valley to do investment banking at Goldman. Absolutely loved it because I loved and hated it. So I loved it in the sense that Goldman is like the number one firm for like training. So they do a really, really good job with training their employees. And so it just taught me how to be a good employee, like how to, be professional with emails and how to work fast and just a lot of be punctual, like all these things that really matter in a workplace. But what I didn't like is I didn't love the work per se. It wasn't something I was passionate about, because I was an engineer by heart, and like banking is something totally outside of that.
Right.
And so, I sort of knew that, and I was looking at people like, 3-5 years ahead of me, and there was nothing about their jobs that excited me. And I was like, okay, if I'm not excited by what these people are, what this is leading up to, like, what's the point of spending time here? So I left after my first year, and I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I started to, a few friends told me that venture capital could be a good thing to do after banking. So I started to look into that. And I honestly got the job at A16Z through a cold email. So I sent a cold email to someone at the firm, and they answered. They did have a coffee meeting with me. So 2 months later, that coffee meeting finally got scheduled. And then after that meeting, I just got accelerated through the recruiting process. And then another 2 months later, I got an offer.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about that email? Like, that's got to go to the cold email hall of fame. Like, what did you write to get their attention there?
I don't even remember what was in that email. I was just very like honest, and I came from Goldman, so I had some kind of credential there, and I was just honest about who I am and like what I'm looking for.
Right.
And yeah, so he responded, and I was like, oh wow, like this is awesome. So yeah. And I think like, because I spent a lot of time recruiting for investment banks, like I had to, like that was a big thing. It's like I wrote so many cold emails back then in college, because I was like reaching out to like every investment banker I could, just to get like a informational meeting with them to understand what they do and like all that stuff. So I just got really good at cold emails. I sent like hundreds of them in college. So yeah, it was another cold email. I still send them once in a while. Like I don't mind reaching out to people cold. I think if you're just very honest and authentic about it, people will answer.
Nice.
So yeah, then got the job at A16Z, and originally I was on the growth team, and then I wanted to move to the venture side. So I proved myself, and then ended up moving to the venture side. And that was like so fun. I got to work with people like Chris Dixon and Mark Andreessen. And I saw the Coinbase deal happening while I was there. I didn't work on it, but I saw sort of why they were investing. And so that was like my first, exposure to crypto, when I heard about Coinbase and what they're doing. And at the same time, Balaji had joined the firm as well. And he basically got everyone in the firm to he wanted everyone to, check out
Embrace
this crypto
it.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And a lot of people just didn't get it. But Mark and Chris were super on board with it. I personally didn't fully understand it either. And then probably a year after that was when I finally clicked for me, of why crypto matters.
And walk me through the process, like how, I'm sure you talked to your parents, your loved ones, close friends and family, your network. Like, was anyone on board for you leaving a place like A16Z?
If I have to be totally honest, I don't really make decisions by telling other people. It was just a decision I made for myself, because, when I was at A16Z, I was meeting entrepreneurs every day, having conversations with them. And I just felt like I felt like I was young and had a lot of energy, but I felt like if I had that, then why wasn't I on the other side of the table doing what they're doing? Why was I the one listening, right? It was so cool to see all these people going and building these companies that they dreamed of, rather than just listening to that. So I was like, I want to be on that side of the table. I want to be the builder. And I felt like the one skill set I was missing was knowing how to code. Because if you've been in Silicon Valley ever, you know that most people have a bias towards technical co-founders or technical founders, because if you're building a tech company, how the heck could you not know the technology, right?
You need one.
You need to. Even if you're not coding day to day, I think you just knowing how tech works is important. And I felt like there was that bottleneck there, where even when I was analyzing companies, right, at A16Z, I felt like I wish I knew how to code, because it would help me understand this company better, right?
Right. Yeah.
So I just felt like if I want to go build my own company, I need that skill set. And so I knew that, if I wanted to come back and be an investor, I can always be an investor. People are investors late into their careers, but, learning how to code, I think that was the perfect time for me to probably go do that, because, once you start a family, for example, or have other responsibilities, doing something like that, it's just way harder.
Yeah, you're toast.
So I was able to just go all in and jump into it and spend the next 6 months, just only learning how to code, 12 hours a day, just learning how to code. So that's why I left.
And then you learned how to code and you got a job at Coinbase. Now, it's crazy how things come full circle in life. You were in those Coinbase meetings back at A16Z, and then you get a chance to work for them.
Working at Coinbase was like working at any other company. The only difference was that they're building a crypto app. So I was doing React programming at the time, if you know what React is. So I wasn't actually building on the blockchain, right? So I was just building widgets using React, but it was for a crypto company. Coinbase, at the end of the day, is a centralized company.
Right.
And so a lot of the stuff that I was doing was very much React oriented. So I was learning JavaScript and, Ruby on Rails and stuff like that, but I was not learning any crypto while I was there.
Right. And did you ever get a chance to speak with Brian or any of the other founding members of the team?
Yeah, of course. I interviewed with Brian, I interviewed with Fred, and so I was there when, both of them were there, and when Dan was there, and like Jim Pawson, who's one of the best, like one of the key original engineers. So yeah, like a lot of the original, Olaf was also still there back then. So a lot of the original people were there. Linda, Nick, all the
OGs.
Yeah, the OGs were all there. So it was an interesting time for sure. So it's interesting to see all of them disperse and do their own things.
And did you ever think Coinbase would pop off like it did?
In terms of like in the public markets?
Yeah, like just becoming a $100 billion corporation.
I mean, like, I think at the time probably I wouldn't have thought that, just because when I joined, like people, no one was paying attention to crypto, and I left before 2017, so I was only there for like 8 months.
I see.
Like I said, I was working on React stuff, and I felt like I wanted to learn. If I was going to work in crypto, I wanted to work on crypto stuff, and I felt like I don't know. I felt like I could do the same work at any centralized company, and so I get impatient sometimes. Like sometimes I don't wait things out, but I was like, at the time I was like, I think I want to check out this whole crypto world thing. So I left, and after I left was when 2017 happened. And so when I left, if you had asked me, like, do you think Coinbase would get as big as it is today, I probably would have said no. Actually, I take that back. I think like what's interesting about Coinbase is like they always had a really, really, really interesting culture. And really, like, what I liked about Brian was that he's very focused, I think is the right word. He's very focused and he listens. He doesn't always act on everything that everyone tells him, but he does listen. And I think that's super important for a company in crypto where there's so many new things to do all the time. And so you have to like stay on top of the game, but you also need to focus. So I think he always had this like ability to focus, and they also were really, really good at hiring. And so talent filtering was also like they had a really high bar. So like it's one of those things where like I would have expected them to be successful. I just wouldn't have guessed that they'd be as big as they are today. Right.
It also helps when I don't know if they were first to market, but definitely the most prominent at the time, and that name and clout helped them carry that momentum to present day. But speaking of present day, you have a crypto course that you've chose to release via email. It focuses on the history of money and crypto as a whole. Every couple days, I get a fresh email from your course right in my inbox. I absolutely love it. I drag it down to my read later folder, and it's one of the few emails that I actually read fully, it's just crazy because I understand crypto, and many people understand crypto, but have such little understanding of why it's become so prominent and the history behind it. And you need to be familiar with the history of money and monetary policy, and your course literally nails that right on the head. A little bit about the titles. And mind you, this goes in chronological order. And today I got lesson number 18, which was titled The Great Moderation, ... and also, why does Yellen hate on Bitcoin? I love this. She's become a bit of a character, and I know the cryptoverse absolutely hates her. When I picture Yellen, I just picture her waking up in the morning, grabbing a nice, big ceramic bowl, and she's a nail gun. She probably just pours a bunch of like, nails, nuts, bolts, and a couple splashes of almond milk in the bowl, and just thinks like, who am I going to go after today? Like, what kind of ruckus am I going to cause? We'll get to yelling later, but tell me a bit more about the course, and why did you choose to release it via email of all of the formats that you could have chosen?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I kind of launched it, towards the end of 2020 when everyone was, dealing with their own stuff, I guess. And I had took a break from crypto for a few months, and I was like, I always knew that I wanted to do crypto education. It was something I've been wanting to do since 2018. I just never had the time because I was building my own company, and I just couldn't dedicate the time to do crypto education. So since I took time off and I was coming back into crypto again, I was like, okay, like I'm going to do this crypto education stuff. And like I really evaluated doing video pretty seriously. But the reality is like producing video content just is the threshold for that is a lot higher. And I realized that even if I want to produce video content, I have to know what I want to say. And the best way to kind of know what you want to say is to write it. So I was like, why don't I just like write it first? And then have like all the content, and then I can sort of, if I want to later, produce the video. So I was like, let me just keep this easy, because I didn't want to like commit to this like giant video course, because that's just like overwhelming, right? So I was like, let's take baby steps and let's start with the written stuff, and then I'll layer on video. So I did the first entire part in all text, and I'm naturally pretty good at writing, so I just kind of leverage that skill set to do it in text and email. But now I'm at a phase where sort of, I've finished writing the Bitcoin section, and I'm now figuring out like, okay, so what comes next? Because I think like, I think like the parts that I think are better served in text format are sort of done. And now I think is a good time to get into like the video stuff. So yeah, there's no honestly, like I wish I had a better like or a more compelling reason for why email, besides it was just simpler and easier to get up and running versus trying to do something that's like super full-fledged.
Well, you could fully write a book with this. Like the emails are not short. Every one is a good, depending on the email, It's like anywhere between a 4 to, almost some of them like 15-minute read, depending on how quick a reader you are. And I know this could literally take this could be a Dan Carlin history podcast if we went through the whole thing, but could you give just a very quick, 2 to 5 minute spiel on the history of money, the means of transaction from the Stone Age, like you started, and just sort of onto 2021 Bitcoin, Spark Notes? I know that's almost an impossible question, but if you could give that a whirl, that'd be great.
I will try. So I think the way I started the course was that money, many people don't fully understand how money got started, what money is. It's not even a question we were ever taught to think about. We just use money to buy things, but we never think about like, why? Where did this come from? How did this whole concept of using money start from? So a big part of understanding that is understanding sort of how in historic times people used to exchange value. And so historically, there were many, many forms of money. Money was not just paper money. It started from things like shells and beads and things like that, where people used collectibles to basically exchange value. So if you had, cattle that I needed to, for food, I can exchange my beads that you can use as jewelry for that cow. So people sort of used collectibles and such things as currency for a long time. And then as, human civilizations sort of like became more and more, as it progressed, that form of money started to take on different things. And, gold was another one, right? So like precious metals started to become even more popular form of money because they were better than just beads and shells, because precious metals can actually be more easily transported. They're just more universally recognized. If you might like this bead, but another person might not, but gold, like everyone can sort of like gold, right? So it was just more universally accepted and had better properties of money. So yeah, we started to move from collectibles to precious metals, and then eventually paper money was invented. And, there's still debates about when this first happened. Some say it happened in China first, some say in India. Still pretty unclear, but regardless, it happened. And that kind of spawned a whole new generation of how we think about money. And that's when the first banks were created, and this idea that we have like promissory notes and we can exchange these. We don't have to carry around all these gold with us. We can just kind of like put the gold in kind of a locker, and we can denote that gold in a promissory note, and we just exchange these notes. And so it was just a much easier form of money, and that allowed for much, much quicker and faster and smaller transactions, because we're not, again, carrying around these golds or beads anymore. We're just carrying around money. And so that takes us through, until basically before Bitcoin. We continue to use paper money in just different ways. Now we have much more sophisticated banking systems that actually manage the paper money, but it's still just paper money. And, there was a period in the U.S. history where that paper money used to be backed by gold, like I said, but then we completely decided to move off the gold standard, and we just became purely fiat currency. And fiat means it's not backed by anything. It's just backed by the government, basically. So we went from gold-backed paper currency to just like paper currency backed by the government. And so that's where we are today. And these people called the cypherpunks have been watching what the bankers have been doing with the fiat currency, and how, they don't really have the best interest of the people in mind as much as we think they do, in the sense that they do a lot of bad things behind the scenes. And for example, you start to see how the modern banking system completely failed us in 2008. All of that kind of came to the surface, and most people had no idea that this was happening in the banking industry. And so these people called the cypherpunks were super passionate about this problem. They felt like money should be something that the people own and not the government. They felt like we need to go back to the times when, people were trading things like beads and stuff with each other, because that's like completely controlled by the people. The government doesn't control that source of money. And so these cypherpunks kind of went to work, and there was many, many attempts of trying to build a digital currency that's decentralized on the internet. There's like eGold and a bunch of other attempts. None of them really worked. And so finally in 2008, when Satoshi published the paper, it was sort of a culmination of all of these efforts that came before it. And he kind of took all the lessons learned from these different attempts to build a digital and decentralized currency and built Bitcoin. So Bitcoin kind of, as they say, stands on the shoulder of giants, in the sense that it's very innovative, but it's innovative only because it has like all these predecessors that it can get its architecture from, basically. And
that right there is why you should subscribe to the email course. That was awesome. Thank you. That could be a university course right there in that little 5-minute spiel. The email course is that on steroids and goes into depth and covers all the little details. And again, coming from someone who knows crypto but had very little understanding of the nitty gritty in regards to the history, that's exactly what you're going to get. So thank you again for that. That was awesome. This episode is brought to you by our dear friends at CoinPoker, the world's premier crypto poker platform. CoinPoker is a revolutionary blockchain technology-based platform that was developed by an ambitious team of poker players. CoinPoker uses USDT stablecoin as the main in-game currency and CHP as in-game fuel, offering all benefits of the crypto world alongside. CoinPoker also features instant and secure transactions using USDT, Ethereum, Bitcoin, or CHP tokens, and no KYC. You heard that right, no KYC. CoinPoker users get huge promotions as they give away thousands in fiat each week. CHP is the currency of the CoinPoker economy, providing players with exclusive benefits and supports future developments delivered to the CoinPoker community. My favorite part about CoinPoker is the mobile app. When I'm on the go, I whip out my phone and play a couple hands of Texas Hold'em or bet on sports. They have an amazing sportsbook, really clean spreads, very clean UX, and an overall great time. If you'd like to check them out, go to coinpoker.com and give them a try. I'd love to jump into a couple more of the present day topics. We are recording on 420. It is International Grab Some Rolling Papers, Grab Some Flowers, Spin One Up and Blaze It Day. And it is now also International Dogecoin Day. Have you seen that?
No.
I guess the Doge community has mandated that 420 is also Dogecoin Day, and they're trying to pump it up today more so than ever. What's your take on this bananas Doge bull run as of the last 2 weeks?
I mean, a lot of people in my community have been asking me, like, how does this make any sense? Like, there's no, like, rational reason for why Dogecoin should be taking off. And, you know, there's no utility for Dogecoin. But the reality is, like, 99% of the tokens that exist in the crypto market are speculative. So a lot of them are just purely just based on speculation. With Dogecoin, it's not even speculation as much as like just like meme. It's like it shows you the power of mimetic marketing, right? Like Elon Musk goes on Twitter and hypes up Dogecoin, and because of the imagery of this Doge, it's very powerful in people's minds, and it captured value as a result. So it just shows you like there's no like objective or like analytical way that you can think about this besides it's just the power of memes.
Oh, I completely agree. I've gotten hammered from friends and family the last couple of weeks. I had some close family members reach out literally right before this massive bull run and be like, should I buy Doge? And I said the exact same thing. I was like, there's no utility. It's a nonsensical coin. It has no value. It's a piece of trash. And what happens a couple of days after I say that? It goes to the moon. there's nothing. Yeah, there's nothing you can do about it. Moving forward to Bitcoin though, before we jump into it, hot takes. When will it hit 100K?
Oh, I think that will happen undoubtedly. I would say, if I had to guess, I think sometime in late 22, 23.
You're not a 2021 laser eyes 100K believer?
Yeah, I think we're going to see a little bit of a correction happening towards the end of this year. I think it'll happen. This is my total speculation, but I think we're going to see a correction sometime. I have a hard time seeing this, but I'm also honestly I'm a terrible predictor, so please don't take my word for it. Yeah, I'm not good at predictions.
And do you think, I know we talked about Janet Yellen earlier, the nail gun. Do you think she has anything to do with this? If she wanted to, does she have the power to literally just put her foot down and be like, you know what, we're going to gas Bitcoin, we're going to create a CBDC and make her own party of it?
I definitely think that she will. I think a CBDC is definitely going to happen in almost every country in the world. It's just a matter of when. And I think they're going to use that as a way to compete with Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies because, as we all know, Bitcoin does pose a competitive threat to fiat currencies that these governments manage. And so, but I think like CBDCs offer a completely different value prop than what Bitcoin offers. And I think people often assume that CBDCs will kill Bitcoin, but I think that's completely the opposite of what will happen. I think CBDCs will actually only empower Bitcoin because CBDCs will be centrally managed, right? They're managed by the government and controlled by the government. So that only gives more incentive for people to hold on to something that's purely managed by the people, which is Bitcoin. And so I think even if CBDCs become a thing, that's actually a very powerful narrative for Bitcoin. And plus, like Bitcoin has to admit that it's just not a good. Originally, Satoshi envisioned Bitcoin to be a payment mechanism, right? If you read the white paper, he specifically says like this is going to be a global payment system. Clearly, Bitcoin is not a good payment system, and I don't think it will be any. It will be that in the near term at all. And I think CBDCs can serve as that thing in a more centralized way, while Bitcoin continues to serve as like digital gold. So yeah, I think she will launch a CBDC, and it'll be interesting to see.
Why don't you think Bitcoin makes a good payment system?
It's just not scalable. It's not scalable. It's not cheap. And so like you can't really, like if you read the original white paper, right, he talks about how we want a system where we can send like micropayments and, it has to be cheap and fast and allow for commerce on the internet to be a lot more flexible and agile and all that. But like Bitcoin, it's just a really bad medium of exchange because the fees are high and it's just slow. And the transaction throughput is very, very small because there's only a block every 10 minutes. And so if you kind of watched how Bitcoin has evolved, when Bitcoin was first founded, it was thought of like as this payment mechanism, right? It was like digital payments on the internet, which is something that PayPal tried to build but never happened. But then once people started to realize that this is not a good payment system, the narrative shifted to, okay, this is going to be a digital gold. And I think that when the narrative shifted to digital gold was when Bitcoin, I think, found its product market fit. Because for a long time, people doubted, like, what the hell is Bitcoin actually useful for? It's not a good payment system. And so, like, what is the point of this thing? And when it kind of came out and said, like, we are digital gold, that's when it clicked for people, like, okay, that makes a lot more sense. And that's when it had product market fit. So narratives really, really matter in crypto. It's like, I would say most of crypto is sort of this like mimetic narrative marketing of like, what kind of analogies and things that can we use what kind of narratives can we use to convince people that this is a better form of money?
Well said. I also find it, and again, I could be looking at this through the completely wrong lens, but I've also envisioned a time where you go to Chipotle and snag a burrito bowl and you pay in Bitcoin, and it's like, this burrito bowl costs 0.0000012 Bitcoin. And it's just like, that's hard on the mind to sort of grasp that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of that too. I think at some point that gets easier because there's always ways to denominate it in like, cents and the Bitcoin's version of cents and so forth. I think that like the bigger problem is just that it's just slow and like, we've always known that the throughput for Bitcoin is just like way too slow for any kind of serious payments. So I think like the other big thing is like, once the mining rewards are done, at some point in 2140, right, there's not going to be any block rewards. So at that point, all of the fees for transacting on the chain will have to come from transaction fees. So the only incentive for miners to do that are going to come from transaction fees, which means transaction fees have to go higher up.
Right. Good point.
To compensate for that. So if there's higher transaction fees, people are going to want to transact less on the base layer. So then they're going to only use the blockchain for specific types of transactions, and then they're going to probably use it just to hodl. And so again, like that digital gold narrative, that's when I think it really started to make sense of like what this could actually be useful for.
Gotcha. Preethi, this has been incredible. Couple of quick questions and then we will take off. NFTs, such a hot topic right now, and I know you've written a bit about them and have touched on them a couple of times. Are we going to see a Preethi NFT where the winner or the top bidder of the NFT gets an hour of your time and an hour to learn about crypto every month or something like that? Is that ever going to happen?
That's interesting. I never thought about that. That's actually a good idea. Yeah, NFTs are interesting. I think what you're seeing happening now is like, it almost feels like in the 2017 era when ICOs were taking off and like everything had to have a token.
Yep.
I think you're starting to see the same thing with NFTs, except NFTs are a little bit more interesting in that I think there's a lot of potential for NFTs. I just don't believe that. I do believe a lot of people will lose money in this round because there's a lot of things that are being priced way too high that in the long run just will not have a value or a price. But I think the way that the NFT market will evolve is there'll be like a few things that are really, really useful for to use NFTs for, and the rest of the use cases that are being experimented with today, we'll kind of realize like we don't really want that or need that. Same thing with ICOs, right? Like everything had a token, and at some point people started to realize like, okay, we don't need a token for literally everything. And there's some projects that have a lot of value because their token is actually valuable, and then other projects you're like, this doesn't need a token.
Nonsensical,
right?
Yeah. Last question, and this one could again be a podcast just by itself. Crypto in India. I know the recent ban and everything else, you are very bullish on India, as well as Balaji, and both of you brought up some incredible points in regards to that. I could have my numbers wrong, but I believe in the last 3 to 4 years, there were 700 or 800 million Indians who just got online and now have access to internet. Crazy economy, very smart people, very hardworking people. And with COVID now reflecting the global economy aspect, and now that companies can hire from anywhere around the world, that bodes extremely well for India. And India can have some massive crypto successes in the future. And I'd love to hear where you stand on that.
Yeah, I'm very, very bullish about India in general, and then especially crypto in India. So the number is actually like 400 million. So what happened was India, most of Indians couldn't afford the internet, 5 years ago. And then a company called Jio came into India and offered free wireless internet for anyone in India. So as long as you had a mobile phone and you can get a SIM card, you can get free internet. They did that for, I think, a year or so, and that brought like millions and millions of people online. And then at some point, they started charging for the internet, just trivial amounts because they need to make money at some point. But by that time, the Indians were addicted to their phones, and YouTube and all that stuff was really blowing up. And so as a result, like all of those Indians that came online for free ended up staying on the internet. So we have basically 400 million new Indians online, and they're consuming so much content on YouTube and Facebook and Twitter and all these social networks. And if you actually do the number crunching, you'll see that Indians represent a majority of almost every social network, whether that's YouTube or Facebook or Twitter or Instagram. And so if you wonder why sometimes you'll see a lot of Indians in comments, it's because they actually represent a majority of these networks in a big way. So, and so now what you're seeing in India is where US was probably in like 2008 timeframe, 2009. And that was like, the peak that was when US was just trying to peak, right? Like it was going, Facebook was trying to take off, like Instagram was just getting founded. All these things were taking off. So I think you're going to see the next decade really be promising for India in a big way. Because all of the pieces are coming together. They have the internet, they have really, really strong leadership. They just have like a bunch of like the foundational things that they need to really take off. And then crypto specifically, so like I went to India in 2016, and I was kind of disappointed by the crypto scene in India because there was a lot of like hype and just like it was just, when you see Silicon Valley crypto, when you see like something that's like just pure speculation and hype, you're like, oh, these people just don't get it. And then I went back in 2020 and I was like shocked at how much they've I went in 2018 and then I went back in 2020. And even within those 2 years, I was just shocked at like how savvy and smart the crypto entrepreneurs have gotten. Like they were actually building like really cool things, and their level of knowledge was on par with the people I was talking to in Silicon Valley. And that's when I knew that like something radical had happened in India, where all of these people just learned about crypto somehow and are building like really cool things. And so I made a prediction that in the next 5 years, we'll just see a lot of interesting things come out of India.
I was in Chennai at the end of 2018, and I even saw like Bitcoin posters and Bitcoin billboards in Chennai, and going to local restaurants and stuff. The few English speaking people that were there, well, everyone spoke English, but the people who could speak really good English, they would ask us about Bitcoin and crypto. And I was like, what? This is bananas. Just such a cool place. And again, this could be a whole podcast episode in itself, but Preethi, this has been incredible. Thank you so much for jumping on. Before you go, please tell our guests where they can find you online and how they can snag your email course.
Sure. So I have a website called preethikasireddy.com, and you can find my course link directly there, or you can go on my Twitter on my pinned tweet, and my Twitter handle is IAM_Preethi. And I have my pinned tweet there with the course link. So just follow me there or just check out my website.
Thanks again for coming on. This has been a blast. I learned a lot. I'm sure our guests have too. Thank you so much, and hopefully we will have you on again soon.
Awesome. Thanks so much.